Welcome to Figure Feedback. My name is Jeremy, and this is the HeyGears Reflex 2. It is the latest resin 3D printer from HeyGears, and it is available by the time you're looking at this video on October the 23rd. So right off the bat, let me tell you that in this video, you are going to see what my experience has been like using this printer. I'm going to run you through all the little quirks and stuff that I found and things that have happened along the way. And I'm also going to let you know how this differs from the original Ultracraft Reflex, because this is the direct follow-up to that. Not necessarily the Reflex RS or the RS Turbo. Those came afterwards. So in most of my comparisons, I'll try to just focus on the original Reflex, but then I'll sprinkle in some RS comparisons as well. Now, let me tell you what the price is going to be so you know what that is right out the gate. Now, in usual HeyGears fashion, because this is brand new, they're going to be running the sale. Now, originally, this printer is going to cost $1,799, but because it's brand new and it's an early bird special, you can get it right now for $1,439. And also, because I am a privileged YouTuber, I've been given an extra discount to pass along to you, which is a discount of $50. So if you use the link in the description, or if you go to their website and you use the promo code Figure Feedback, that's going to knock the price all the way down to $1,389. So that's a pretty steep discount from what the original price is going to be. And that is going to last all the way until November 11th. All right. You should also know that there is another version of the Reflex 2. It is called the Reflex 2 Pro, which I do not have, but that printer is taller than this one, gives you more of a build area to work with, and that printer is going to cost $2,999. So right here in front of me, I have written down a lot of very important information, specifications that I think that you need to know about this printer. And even though I know that talking about specs can be boring, I think that is very important for this printer, because I think one of the more difficult things that HeyGears may have to deal with this particular printer is explaining how this is an upgrade from the original Reflex. Because to a regular consumer, when we see a follow-up to a product, we want to see with our eyes, visualize what's different about it. Is it shaped differently? Is it colored differently? What other doodads did you put on the printer that the other printer didn't have? And when I started using this printer and I was looking for those things, I found some, but for the most part, it didn't feel like it was all that much different than their machines in the past. And that is because the majority of the biggest, most important upgrades are not things that you see on the surface. It's what they've done on the inside of the machine. Now, let's start off with these specs, all right? And I got a lot to tell you. So, when it comes to the build area, this is going to have a larger build area than the original Ultracraft Reflex, and it also has a larger build area than the RS and the RS Turbo. Specifically, it is 230 by 144 by 230 millimeters, as opposed to the original Ultracraft Reflex, which was 191 by 121 by 220 millimeters. Now, if you want to really step it up and you want to go for the Reflex 2 Pro, you're going to get the same amount of distance on the X and the Y, but when it comes to the Z, it is stepping itself all the way up to 330 millimeters. So if you need to print some tall stuff, then the Reflex 2 Pro is what you're going to be after. All right, so before I move forward, let me slow down. I'll tell you about the unboxing experience. All right. So in true HeyGears fashion, the unboxing experience was good. Everything is packaged nicely. There's a lot of little goodies inside of the printer housing itself that you can take out, and they give you everything that you need in order to get started, including your trusty metal resin scraper and your plastic little scraper as well. You get yourself a tool that you can use for leveling should you need to do that. And you also get like a little bottle cap that you can put on the resin bottles. And then what you'll also find inside of the box is a new addition to the Ultracraft Reflex line of printers, and that is a resin mixer. So it attaches to the vat, and after every layer, the build plate's going to rise, and then that mixer is going to move from right to left and then from left to right, and it's going to make sure that resin stays nice and mixed. And it does other things as well, and I will get into that a little later on. The build plate this time around is similar to the original Ultracraft Reflex. It is all metal and it has all of those holes inside of it. So it's not like the RS build plates, which is just a flat piece of metal with no holes. So it kind of just harkens back to that. And once you turn on the printer, it still wants to go through a lot of automatic procedures. It's still loaded with technology, just like its previous printers has, for detecting peeling forces and giving some real-time feedback on those forces and knowing if there's residue inside of the tank and things that can help you to prevent cracking your screen. And it still has all of that. And it also does a true automatic leveling procedure. And when I set up my first Ultracraft Reflex 2, my build plate was not level. And just like I'm sure anybody would do, I went, oh, come on, this just got here. I don't want to have to do maintenance on this thing. Oh, I have such bad luck. But it was really easy to get it back level, because using that tool, all I had to do was take off this little black plug that was on top of the Z-axis, and the screen told me how I needed to turn that screw using that tool. If I need to turn it to the left or turn it to the right. And then there was a green and red indicator that just told me, hey, it's green now, so it's level. You're good. So I just had to do a little tiny turn, and then I was good. I put the little black stopper back on it. Everything was great. It ran through its procedures, and I was ready to go. And when you look on the inside of the printer, you'll see that it's not a whole lot going on, and it looks very similar to how the RS and RS Turbo looks in the inside. So you're still getting that new amber screen that was introduced with the RS Turbo, and it is a 10.7-inch 6K amber screen Pro. And when it comes to refilling the resin, unlike the original Ultracraft Reflex, which had that little fancy gate that would open up to let the resin through, they don't do that no more with this. Instead, they're adapting the much simpler method that the RS models have, where there's just this little nub that sticks out from the back of the vat, and then you put the resin bottle with the cartridge inside, and then it pokes that little ball up, and when that ball is up, the resin will flow, and it just keeps doing that via gravity. So no more fancy gate. It just kind of just does it, in a very simplistic way now. And just like on the RS models, depending on the resin that you're using, the flow can be quite slow. So if you are impatient, or if you just don't want to wait so long for your vat to fill up, you just do what I do and just pour what you need inside of the vat just to get it started. And then you can just put the cartridge inside just to make sure that you can stay topped off. On the front of the printer is the touch screen that is now located on the left side of the printer, as opposed to being in the center of the printer. And then over on the left side is where you'll have a spot for a micro SD card for internal storage. You get a USB slot for transferring your files if that's something that you need to do. And then there's an Ethernet port also on the left side of the printer. On the back, there are ports where you can connect the pulsing release module, more on that in a second, as well as the power cable and the power switch. And then on the right side, it's nothing. It's just completely smooth. So if you just look at these things, you will probably think to yourself, I know I did, what is exactly different about this printer? Because as I was printing with it, I didn't notice any big increases with speed or anything like that. So what exactly did they do? And that is why all of these written specs are so important. And it starts with the screen. Okay, so it is, like I said before, that 10.7-inch 6K amber screen. But here's what they've done to make that screen even better. This model, when you're printing, it only lights up the areas that are being cured at that specific time. All of the other lights will stay off. And they're using what they call 161 optozone light engine. And when those lights illuminate, the other areas stay very dark. So that means that there's going to be very little light that's straying into other areas that can help cut down on residue. But it also makes it so that the screen can last longer because every single area is not being flooded with light every single time you print a new layer. So it helps it to last a little bit longer. The screen is also stronger so that it can resist more pressure. And they've added a ventilation system to the screen as well. And they're calling this the thermal ventilation structure that will actively push the heat away from the screen, which is something that the original Ultracraft Reflex did not do. And because it's using that Amber Screen Pro, that particular screen is also more UV resistant. All those things combined means that the screen lasts longer. And because screens are a consumable resource in these types of LCD resin 3D printers, that is a big deal, especially if you're someone who's going to be using this a lot. And HeyGears said that they are really pushing this towards small, medium-sized studios, basically people who are using this printer for work, using it as a profession, not necessarily the hobbyists, although a hobbyist could definitely still use this printer, but it's because of that improved screen and the elements around it, it really helps in a production setting. So, for example, this screen will last approximately 12 and a half times longer than the screen on the original Ultracraft Reflex. And that in and of itself is a huge upgrade, in my opinion. Something that you won't know, that you don't actually see, but that's what that screen can do. Compared to the RS and the RS Turbo rather, this screen will last about 2.5 times longer than that screen. And they've made it easy enough to swap the screen out. It's a modular design, so just a couple of screws, a few screws, and you just take a couple things apart, put it back on. So it's not complicated to switch out the screen. But when do you have to switch out that screen? Well, the screen on the Reflex 2 is estimated to last around 6,000 hours of active printing time. And with the 6,000 hour lifespan of this screen in active printing time, HeyGears likened it to if you were to be printing with this for 16 hours a day for 365 days straight. So if you printed every day for 1 year for 16 hours every single day, you would still be a little bit under that 6,000 hour lifetime for that particular screen. That is really, really good. So that is one of the big upgrades that this printer has going for it. So the screen is a big upgrade that you don't really see, but one addition that you actually do get to see is with that resin mixer. And that resin mixer does more than just mix the resin, because the heated vat is now gone. They don't use a heated vat for this printer. Instead, that resin mixer is the heating source. So in addition to mixing the resin to make sure that it stays at as low a viscosity as it can, and making sure that different pigments don't get separated as easily, making sure everything stays nice and flowy, it also heats the resin at the exact same time. And making sure that resin can stay uniformly heated as it's going across the vat every time you print a layer and the build plate moves up. Now, here's the downside of that. By default, you don't get the heated metal resin mixer. That is an additional optional purchase for around $70 or so. Instead, inside the box, you get a plastic resin mixer, which does not heat, but still does the mixing. I think that that is a downgrade from the original Ultracraft Reflex, because that one had a heated vat as standard. So naturally, I feel that the metal resin mixer should have also just been included with the Reflex 2. It is, however, included in the Reflex 2 Pro S standard, but for this one, it's an optional upgrade. So I wish that they would have kept that just a standard all around, because if you are targeting a studio setting, then you want them to have as little friction as possible. And one of the biggest downsides you can encounter with resin printing is cold resin. It can cause problems, print failures. It's the biggest problem. So you want to make sure that resin stays nice and heated. So it should have just come as a standard feature for this particular printer. Another thing that that resin mixer can do is detect if there's residue in the vat, because that's something that happened to me. I was printing a model from Star Wars that was modeled by Galactic Armory. It was this guy here, Turgle, and I was printing him as well as his two arms at the same time. One of his arms, unfortunately, fell off of the supports and was in the vat. And as the resin mixer was going from left to right, and it countered the resistance from that arm that fell into the vat, and it immediately reset itself. And then it tried to slowly go across the vat again just to make sure that everything will be okay. And when it ran into that arm again, it said, nope, can't continue. And the printer stopped the print. It canceled it. It said that the print had failed and there was nothing that I could do. And because it printed at that particular spot, this model that was so close to finishing never got a chance to finish. And so while I'm happy that that resin mixer can detect things like that and take some kind of action, I just wish that that action wasn't canceling the print. I wish that you could just pause the print. And as far as I'm able to tell you, at this moment, you cannot pause the print on this printer. You can only stop it. But if it could just pause and lift the build plate so that some human eyes can take a look and see exactly what's going on, I probably would have been able just to remove that arm from the vat, tell it to continue, and then the main portion would have finished printing. And, it's a good looking model. I mean, look at it. It's just not complete. All right. So that's something the resin mixer can do, but I just wish that the action that it took was less severe, especially if you were printing something that took a long time and required a lot of resin. This printer is also compatible with the pulsing release module. And if you remember from the previous printers, it was like this air compressor that would sit next to the printer, and it would just shoot air in between the FEP in order to make the peeling forces lighter so that you can have lighter supports, and it would make your prints print a little bit faster and the supports to be easier to remove. That is back. However, they have a new pulsing release module, which I don't have access to, but that new pulsing release module is going to be compatible with this. And there's some changes to it. Instead of it shooting air, it just pulses this time around. So it's going to be a quieter thing, because the original pulsing release module, like I said, is like an air compressor. So it was pretty loud, but this other one should be quieter. At least that's what they say. And it's also going to last 1.5 to 2 times longer than the original one. But the print speed and the peeling forces are going to be pretty much unchanged from the original PRM. So they're not claiming that you're going to get a big speed boost if you use it. Now, if you already have the original pulsing release module, there's going to be an update that will allow you to use it, but you're going to have to purchase the pulsing release vat for the PRM2 in order for you to use the PRM1 with it. So it's an additional purchase for you. So you can't just swap over the old components and put it on this one if you have it, because it ain't going to work. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the printing process. So if you're not familiar with the way HeyGears does things, it is a closed ecosystem, meaning that they have their own resins that you can use. You can use other third-party resins if you want, but if you want to get the best results possible, because they've tested all these resins and they can vouch for the different settings that they put in, then you are going to want to buy their resins, and they have their own slicer as well. So no Chi2 box, no lychee for this thing. You're going to be using Blueprint Studio, which is a slicer that you can use online if you want to have access to their tech support. If you need it all there from within the slicer, you have different profiles for all the resins that they offer for your particular printer, and then pretty much all the other options that you get when it comes to the different parameters that you want to do when it comes to slicing. You can also use that offline if you don't want to go the online route. So the slicer is very easy to understand, but you cannot change the actual speeds and the distances and different motions that the printer is going to do. That's something that you do not have access to. So lift speeds, retraction speeds, distances, that kind of thing that you would be able to change in other slicers, you cannot do it with this. You can only change things that are associated with your model, and you can customize supports if you want. But when it comes to the function of the actual machine, it does this by itself. So the first thing that I wanted to print off was something that was going to be big. So I decided to print this Iron Man bust here from Wicked. And hey, it turned out looking pretty darn good. Now, I said in a previous video, it's harder and harder these days to find a resin 3D printer that cannot produce models that look good and that cannot produce models that are dimensionally accurate. Okay. And the HeyGears printers are known for doing those things very well, and that tradition continues with the Reflex 2. So I was happy with how this Iron Man turned out. It was nice and smooth. And the thing that I noticed about this printer that I really enjoyed was taking off the supports, which was a pain point for me on the RS model. I found removing the supports to be more difficult than they should have been. But with the Reflex 2, that's something that I did not have to worry about. I don't have the new pulsing release module, so I didn't use it, but the supports were nice and easy to come off. I was very happy to see that. And I did not tweak any of the settings inside of Blueprint Studio, except for changing the support tips from being circles to none. That's the only thing I changed, but I didn't change the distances. I didn't change the width of the support tips in the depth or nothing like that, like I did with the previous RS models, and it just came out looking very good. Unfortunately, that's when problems started to happen. Now, this is the second Reflex 2 that I have, and it started to develop. The first one started to develop this clicking sound on the Z axis, something that I've never heard before. And as I tried to do more prints, I started to get more failures, spectacular failures. And through communication with HeyGears, they determined that there was something faulty with that printer, and I returned it. So they sent me another one, and that is this one. And this model does not have those problems. So I was able to continue printing in short order, but I still just wanted to let you know that that's something that I did encounter. So the next thing up was some miniatures. Of course, I do love my minis, so I just went ahead and got these printed up, and some of these minis require different parts that you have to glue together. That's a good way to test some dimensional accuracy, especially for things as small as this. And as you look at these guys, again, they look really good. And I didn't do any post-processing on these, so you might see some little like support barbs here and there. I mean, it's the reality. It's what happens when you resin 3D print, you know. But these prints, these models, they still look really good. Great detail on these guys, especially the ones with the armor and the details on the shield. And all those parts that I had to glue together, they came together very easily. And then here's another bust from Wicked. This is of Professor X, but disregard his head because I did not print his head on the Reflex 2, but I printed everything else out on the Reflex 2. And this came in different pieces that I had to put together as best I could. And just kind of looking at the texture of this model on his shirt, I guess, and all these weird little things that are, crawling all around them, again, is what I expect from this printer and from HeyGears in general. Also looks good. And I also made a couple of head busts of my parents using the Bamboo Studio online tool where you can take a picture and you can transform that into a model. So I took a couple pictures of them and I got an STL file and I went to print them off, and I'm going to give these to them the next time that I see them. But again, these also came out looking good, nice and smooth, no post-processing, good detail. And one thing I will tell you that I don't consider this printer to be fast. I don't consider any of the RS printers that I have to be fast, and I don't think HeyGears promotes them as being fast themselves. They're more reliable than anything else. So if you're looking for a speed demon, this is not going to be a speed demon. None of them really are speed demons. All right. So it's just more about consistency and quality from these printers, and you're going to get that, but just don't expect them to be done really, really quickly. And I also wanted to try out some of their clear, transparent resin. So I printed out all of these little figures from like Fall Guys. And because HeyGears said that this was something that was, really meant for small studios and stuff like that, I wanted to put a good number of them on the build plate and print them all at the exact same time. And this is how they turned out. Again, no post-processing, anything like that, just to see how good and clear they are. And apparently this particular resin, you can go a pretty good while and you're not going to see any yellowing. Now, I have not been able to test that in the time that I've had that and since I printed these, but these models also came out looking really good and they all printed out just fine. So the printer prints good and the prints look good. I mean, that's something that you don't have to worry about and is dimensionally accurate. All the parts that I had to put together for these busts and for these miniatures, they went together just fine. So that is not a problem at all. The only thing I wish I could show you is how these minis originally look like with the tips for the weapons, because I just accidentally broke those. But, they still went in just fine. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows with any device. And there are some downsides to the Reflex too. Some things that I wish were more visually present in order to give a more firm conclusion that this is the successor to the original Ultracraft Reflex. And some things that I think that they, probably could have done. Starting with the build plate, just like the RS before it, it is dead flat on the top. And even though it has holes in it, it still allows resin to pool on top of the build plate. So when you're finished with your print, you're either going to have to grab it and manually tilt it so that you can reclaim as much resin as you can, or you're just going to have to be content with losing that resin when you set the build plate down on your table so that you can scrape those models off. I really wish that they just would have done one of two things. Either decide to use a curved build plate so that the resin will have a way to just go over the side so you don't have to worry about tilting it, or provide some sort of mechanism on the inside that you can just simply hang the build plate on at an angle so that the resin can drip back into the vat that way. That would have been nice to see. Something else that I wish this printer had is a camera. It's $1,799 is the standard price, but there's still no camera, so you can't monitor your prints. Blueprint Studio will be a great place for you to monitor your prints, but you can't do that here. You're going to have to come up with your own solution. And since this is the follow-up to the Reflex, I think having a camera on there would have been a very nice addition to that. Another thing that you should be aware of is at the time that I record this video, this printer is not yet compatible with as many resins as the original Ultracraft Reflex is or the RS models. So Eventually, in time, I counted about 20 resins that HeyGears says is going to be compatible with this particular printer. But as of right now, when I go into the slicer to count them, the only profiles that are available is between like 8 and 10 different types of resin. So that could all change on launch day. We will see. But as of right now, it is the least versatile printer of the bunch because there are only a handful of available profiles for it. It is expected to increase to include a lot of different types of resins, modeling resins, engineering resins, and specialty resins. But as of right now, on this day as I record it, it's not yet available. So in conclusion, the HeyGears Reflex 2 is a very good printer. If you have any experience with their previous printers, you're going to know exactly how this works. You're going to know exactly how to work it, and you can expect the results to be good, just like it usually is with their other printers. However, the biggest differences are on the inside. The unibody base, for example, is different than it was on the previous models. The screen is a lot more robust on this one than it was on previous models. The ventilation, as far as moving that heat away from the screen, is different than it is on other models. It's these mechanical differences and it's these internal differences that make this printer better in a more production setting, because the main element that is very important, the screen, is going to last a heck of a lot longer than it did previously. And you get a larger build area, which is always great to have. And that is what makes this printer the worthy upgrade to the previous Ultracraft Reflex. So thank you all so much for watching. And remember, if you're interested in picking up this printer, you can check out the link in the description. It'll take you right over there. And if you do decide to make a purchase, part of it will come back to Figure Feedback to help out the channel in the future. So until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you soon.